talk about ways to improve that, to see what we can do to be proactive in making sure that that when we start down a line of thought, or we make decisions, that we make those decisions in our own best interest, for our own very best mental health and wellness, and physical health as well. So let me just, Suzanne is logging out and logging back on. Her Zoom program was not cooperating, so we'll give her another minute and see what we can do here. And here is her PowerPoint. Let me just pull it up from the beginning, and I'm going to share my screen here. And let's see.
Alrighty, and that should work perfectly then.
So let's see what I am here. It's an old Chinese proverb that says, "God, grant me an uneventful life." I'm afraid that is what
I think I am in.
Awesome. And there is your presentation. So if you want to just hold your finger up when you want me to do the next slide, we can do that.
Okay, so welcome everybody, and I'm sorry that we let me just see, of the technical difficulties. So welcome, and I am Dr. Suzanne, and today we're looking at tending to your mental health, and you can change. So even before I start, I just want to check in with you because usually when we ask people how they're feeling, we say, well, how are you feeling? And they say, okay, or they usually go to I'm good or I'm fine. So when we talk about mental health, rarely do we really say, yeah, this is how I'm feeling today, whether it's happy or sad or angry or frustrated or grieving, irritated. So I just want to bring in the awareness of the language of, as we're talking about mental health, to check in and say to yourself, which we're not going to be sharing, just how am I feeling today with my mental health? You know, where is my mindset as we begin? Okay, Linda? So when we talk about what is mental wellness, we often talk about mental illness. So I wanted to start with the positive. And there are 7 main factors that we look at. And I'm sure most of them will make a lot of sense to you. But I think a few of them to really point out is that you want your mind to be based in truth and reality, you know, and think clearly, have a positive mindset. And one that we don't talk about too much is how to express emotions. So we also refer to that as emotional intelligence. So when you're able to say, yeah, this is what I'm feeling, much more than fine or good. And then whatever that feeling is, if it's an intense feeling, be able to express it appropriately without bursting out, oversharing, getting over emotional. And then, of course, normal stresses in life, being able to cope with them, maintaining good relationships, and being engaged with your work and community. So that is the template for knowing if you're mentally well. When we look at a mental illness, you can change. It affects the brain chemistry, and the whole neurological system. And it is disturbances within the chemistry of you, within your body, your physical body, that then disturbs your thought and emotions and behavior. So many people don't realize that mental illness is not based in your psychology. That is how we see it from you and I. But mental illness is based in a organ in your body and a process in your body, which is your chemistry. Additionally, and especially for women, it's based in your hormones. When your hormones are off, the chemistry's off, it affects the brain chemistry, and then it can affect your brain and your psyche. And we see that most often with women during postpartum depression, as we talk about it, menopause. Okay, that's all happening from the connection between the hormones and the brain. Okay, next slide. So the truth about mental health, and I like to shout this from the rooftops, it's a medical condition, just like we have heart disease and diabetes. I want you to think about it now. Whenever somebody says a mental illness, it is rooted in my body, not just my psychology, and I can just pull myself up by the bootstraps and go right along. Not true. Doesn't happen. Your mind is strong, but you have to work with the actual organ. Also, mental illness is treatable, and there's nothing wrong with you to be ashamed of. It's just different illnesses affect different people, different bodies at different times in their lives. I would have to say that everybody goes through bouts of depression or anxiety in their life. Sometimes you need treatment, sometimes you don't, but it is nothing to be ashamed of at all. Next one. So these statistics are really quite alarming. I went back and looked at what was happening in the early 2010 all the way up to now. And yes, COVID has impacted us a lot insofar as mental unwellness or mental health and illness. But what COVID has also done is those people that were living with depression, anxiety, trauma, post-traumatic stress disorder, it just brought it more to the surface and highlighted it more. And people now are reporting it more. So just think about that nearly half of the population has symptoms of anxiety or depression. Half of the population. And the highest increase was between 18 and 29 years of age. And second to that were the younger kids, 10 to 18. So we see the youth affected more right now with mental health issues. Another really fascinating statistic, if you go back for a second, Linda, was that as they did a long-term study, they realized that lifetime cases of mental illness happened in your youth. And oftentimes we go through trauma in our life. We don't realize it at the time that it's always trauma, or we have mishaps in the family system, and that can set the stage for developing a mental health illness later. Okay. Suicide rates. So this is also another very disturbing fact, is that we see since 2010 an increase in suicide across the nation. And in 25 states, it has increased 30%. And it is, as you can read, the second leading cause of death between 10 and 24. So they group those two age populations together. So if you are a single woman or man and you are in this age group, know that you are very susceptible. And what you want to do is when you're starting to feel some really, really deep, low feelings of depression, you want to reach out as soon as possible. Working with people that have suicide ideation, they usually wait too long to get help, and then they're more in a crisis situation. So whenever you start to feel this depression is really sinking deeper, and we'll get to the symptoms, you want to reach out and get some help. Okay, next slide. Who is at risk for a mental illness? Don't you just love this picture? Everybody is. Mental illness does not discriminate at all. Every single person is susceptible to it. And we have this mindset often, especially in America, well, it can only happen to poor people, or it never happens to the wealthy people, or it only happens to people that are marginalized. Not true. So it happens to everybody. Next slide. So when we look at how this can happen, mental illness has to be triggered. So when we look at genetic coding, you may have, let's take a physical example. You may have a genetic, a gene for breast cancer. You may have the BRAX gene. The gene does not have to get activated. So when we look at family systems, if the mother has BRAX and then the daughters may have the gene, not all the daughters will get breast cancer. That's because the gene has to be activated. What activates a gene? Stress. So when you're living a very stressful life and you have some genetic coding in you for some illnesses, it is the stress factor that's going to really bring it to light. So when we look at what are all the risk factors for you developing some kind of a mental health problem, it's the pileup of continual stress that happens. And I didn't put in that could ignite a genetic trait. And if you don't have a genetic trait, it's because you're lacking coping skills or support, or you're isolating more. Those factors contribute to you being more at risk, as well as negative thinking and traumatic events. Then what we have on the right side, something just to kind of point out, is this cyberbullying. And now we know it all from what we're seeing on Facebook and Instagram, and all the investigations are doing. What we see on the screen and how we are treated on the screen, or even how we compare ourselves to other people on our screen. And let's remember, most people on screen post happy pictures, happy stories. And then if we're feeling kind of low, we may have a heavier depression because we feel different from other people. So the cyberbullying could also be that aspect of when we're posting, as well as outright attacks. We also know that environmental toxins, viruses, and bacteria can affect our mental health. Some of them are like lead poisoning. We know that from the studies that are being done on the pipes throughout the United States that are old. We know Detroit in particular, there's lead in the pipes, and we drink the water. The lead goes right into our brain and becomes an environmental toxin and affects our brain and our chemistry. And then we could enter into a mental illness. So let's really, take into account all the different factors that can begin to affect your mental health and wellness, and think about which ones on the screen you want to investigate in your own life, or you want to get some support or be more curious about. Okay, next one. So how do I know if I have a mental health condition, a mental health issue, or a full-blown mental health illness? I love this slide because it really just says it in a very concise way, that on the green arrow, the healthy, those are the things that say, yes, you are a healthy individual. You have a good mental health mindset or template or orientation, and you want to try your best to stay in that green zone. However, because we are human and because we have emotions and things happen, we're going to go into the yellow zone. We're going to have times when we're irritable and nervous and we procrastinate, we can't sleep, our energy isn't right, we don't want to socialize. Okay, that's pretty normal. What you want to be sure of is that you have those experiences and reactions, and then you go back to the safety zone, you go back to the green zone. So often in life, it's going back and forth between the green and the yellow zone and getting yourself reoriented again in yourself based in health. Now, when you start to look at, do I need help? You want to look at the ailing symptoms. If you have, and the basic template again is, if you have at least 4 of the ailings, then it's time for you to get help and professional help. If you have less than 4, you may want to increase your self-care, talk to a friend, join a support group that just gives you more support to talk about the things that are on your mind, uh, or you want to change something in your lifestyle behavior, look at how can I get more sleep, or maybe go to your primary care physician and talk about your sleep or your eating or your fatigue and see if they have some pointers or suggestions for you. So if you're less than 4, you may be able to have more of a support group, a primary care person check you out, but more than 4, you want to go seek help. How do I know if I really have a full-blown mental health illness? Those would be the different symptoms that you would have. What I am seeing more in my practice, what I'm seeing more because of what's happened with COVID and almost the aftermath of COVID, as well as the political and environmental climate issue, I'm seeing more people being depressed. And then on the flip side, more people being aggressive. So it's interesting to see that, the polarity of people going back into sadness and really sinking in depressed mindset and mood and not socializing. And then I see people getting really aggressive with their words and their behaviors and showing their anger in inappropriate ways. And what's not on here, but it implies it, is more addiction. When we have inappropriate behaviors, addiction falls into that category. And so addiction is on the rise in every way. We have the addiction to alcohol, drugs, smoking, shopping, gambling, sex, eating. All of that is addiction. And I'm seeing more of that as well. Okay, next slide. All right, so that's the kind of the overview of mental health awareness. And I looked at the mental health illness, but also brought in some of the mental wellness. And what I want you to understand is your mental health affects every single part of you. And you know this, I know you know this. If you are feeling kind of down and out, physically you feel tired. If you're feeling emotionally spent, then you're also going to feel mentally spent. You may lose a sense of connection with others, which we talk about as spirituality or connection with nature or whatever it is your belief system is. So your mental health, whether it's positive or more on the illness side, it's going to affect every single aspect of your life. Okay, next slide. So we're going to go through the 15 ways to care for your mental well-being. I almost was going to say, 30 ways to leave your lover. Remember that old time song, the rock and roll song? So there are many suggestions out there. I think every day my mailbox gets 2 or 3 mental health articles or suggestions. It's all over the web right now, and podcasts and YouTube. But I wanted to pull out 15 of them, and then we'll spend a little bit of time talking about them. And I am going to be asking you to put in chat questions at the end. So if there's any you have questions to, please have your paper and pencil ready to ask me questions. But you want to be mindful in your everyday life. And I'm going to spend a couple of slides on that. Being mindful means paying attention, paying attention to what's happening in the moment in your daily life. And then managing stress, being kind to yourself, orient to a positive mindset, move more. I also like the phrase move more, eat less. It's a really, really good self-care thought to have and principle. And I'm much older than you all are, I'm sure. And as you increase in age, you want to move more and eat less for sure, because the way our metabolism begins to work. You want to look at your diet, your sleep, and your screen time. Next one. And the second batch is ways to care for your mental health, quiet your mind, gratitude journal, and I'll talk more about some of them. Connect socially, healthy boundaries and relationships. That's a huge one, which a lot of people don't even know how to approach that, or even know when people are toxic and when to say goodbye to them. And we also know that volunteering, that's a real important one, because the research has shown that when we volunteer, when we are helping others, it boosts our mood state as much as it boosts other people's mind states, the ones that we are helping. And then, of course, I'm a big fan of get your regular visits with your physician. When I put in allied health professionals, being a person that's an integrative mental health person, an advocate and patient or client, I go regularly for my massages. I go for my acupuncture, actually tomorrow. I do things with my allied health professionals to keep my wellness, my all aspects of my wellness up. And then, of course, you want to write a mental health well-being plan, which we'll talk about as well. Okay, we can go to the next slide, but I just want to see if anybody wants to put anything in the chat for a moment so I can at least see if there's any questions at this point before I go a little bit deeper into caring for yourself. And Linda, I have to 3:15, correct? I can't hear you. You're muted.
Sorry about that. I think you have a few more minutes since we did get a late start.
Wonderful.
So, yeah, if you need a couple extra minutes. But one thing I wanted to ask you in regard to the information you've already presented is a lot of times I talk to people who have concerns about somebody else's mental health or wellness, not necessarily their own, and that causes a great deal of stress in their life. So, so I wonder if in part of the presentation, if you can address like how do we it's almost impossible, it seems, to get people to recognize and seek help sometimes. If you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think you need to have a conversation with them, and you always want to lead with empathy. If you lead with mental health facts or statistics or their behaviors, that's not going to be helpful at first. So the way that I would approach you, I would say something like, I'm just feeling a lot of empathy and concern for you, Linda, because I'm just noticing some things and I get really worried. So I was wondering if we could just have a conversation because I want to make sure you're okay. I want to make sure you're okay. And then you can point out some of the things that you're seeing, like, I noticed that, you're not joining us for social activities and you tend to say you don't feel like going out, or you're talking a little bit more about how depressed you are, or you're speaking about the fact that, your relationship is not only unfulfilling, but sometimes, your partner's controlling and you don't know how to deal with that. I'm concerned about your mental well-being. And I'm wondering if you have somebody close to talk to, or you'd be open to just getting a mental health checkup, a mental wellness checkup. So putting it in the phrases of a mental wellness checkup, which, I need to write a blog about that myself, would be a really good idea of how do we know when we're mentally well. Talk to your physician or go to a counselor and have just an initial consult. You can do that with a counselor. You can just say, I think I need support, but I'm not sure I need support. Can I just have a consult with you?
Wonderful. And I do know that when I've taken my elderly parents to the doctor, that's one of the questions they ask. And so that might be a really good introduction to that topic, is just starting with your doctor too. That's
Yes,
a really good idea.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, the essential skill is, we hear a lot about it nowadays, I'm sure you all have, is mindfulness is the number one. It's kind of the umbrella to everything else. Because if we're not mindful, which again means paying attention, then we're not going to care for ourselves as much. So I need to have the awareness that I'm being mindful about how I'm feeling, what I'm thinking, what I'm doing, what are my patterns and my habits and my behaviors in my daily life, and to stop and pay attention to that and to see if that is of what I'm feeling, and then if that is of concern. So we also talk about mindfulness, about cultivating presence, and what do you mean by being present? And being present is this feeling in your body that you really can feel into yourself. Like right now, if you're sitting in a chair, you feel your buttocks on the chair. If you are talking like I am, I feel energy in my lungs and in my throat. If my feet are on the floor, I feel my feet on the floor. And then it's also just opening myself to really deeply listening. And if it's in a place of quiet, then I just listen to the sounds. If it's in a place of conversation, then I listen to the person and bring my full attention to that person versus getting distracted or going somewhere else in my mind. Mindfulness is a skill that needs to be cultivated and practiced because it doesn't come overnight and you're always working on it. Okay, next slide. So mindfulness is a way of befriending ourselves in our experience. I love this quote. I mean, think about it. This word befriending, I'm starting to use a lot more, is that, are you a good friend to yourself? And how are you a good friend to yourself, right? Many times when people come in for a mental health issue, I notice that they're bullying themselves the most. They're criticizing themselves the most. So we have to get out of this mindset of criticizing ourselves and being hard on ourselves and bullying ourselves. Well, I should have done this, I should have done that, and befriend ourselves by being kind. So when you are in the here and now, you really are aware of your internal experiences and your and I like to use the example here of getting ill physically, that are you aware of when the symptoms of either physical illness, sore throat, headache, cough, are beginning to manifest? When you have developed a mindset and a presence of mindfulness, you begin to notice before they really go into action whether or not you're getting sick. You feel it inside of your body and you're paying attention to your unique body chemistry and how your body is letting you know you're getting sick. Also with emotions, when you start to feel an emotion and it's an intense emotion. This morning I was working with somebody that was feeling grief, and she had lost her father and she was grieving heavily. When she's in my counseling room, if she's sobbing and crying, that's very appropriately. But if she goes back to work, as she did, to have those emotions come out fully at work is inappropriate in the workplace. So she has to learn how to self-regulate those emotions, to learn how to moderate them in appropriate situations or with appropriate people. That's a part of mindfulness. It's what teaches you how to do that. And of course, being accepting and non-judgmental of yourself and others. How do you start out? All right. So we think about our goals and our visions. If you're a current student right now, or you've just graduated, don't you sit down with yourself and say, what is my vision? What is my intention? What is my goals? And when we talk about what Linda's sharing and her knowledge of financial, I mean, isn't that where financial planners start with? What is your goal? What is your vision? Where do you want to be when you're 65 or 70? The same happens when we look at our mental health. So I want you to start to think of different kind of compartments when you think about your goals and your vision. Yes, think of finances, think of physical health, and then also think about mental health as well as relationships, as well as where do you want to live and how do you want to live, as you age. So get a journal, get some kind of a notebook, and set down your intention of what you would like your mental health state to be. What would you like your mental health state to be? Because we know that intention is the force behind everything. And when you write something down, you're more inclined to make it happen. Next slide. Here we go with befriending yourself. When you are self-caring, you are self-loving. And some people say, well, I don't want to be a narcissist. A narcissist is that personality that always is thinking about themselves. Everything's about them. All attention is on them. And they are in love with themselves in a way that is toxic and mentally ill because they don't have the ability to open up their heart to others, to listen deeply, to be respectful, and to be empathetic and compassionate. So you are not a narcissist if you self-love. That's the extreme. But you are the number one person that deserves your love and care, because without you, everything else is non-existent, right? So give yourself the same kindness you give everybody else. Next slide. And you need to learn how to manage your stress. Just as I was saying in the beginning slides, if you have a particular gene, it has to be triggered. And triggered stress is the number one thing that triggers any kind of dormant gene, but also it triggers any kind of poor mental and physical health. So I often say heart disease is not the leading cause of death for women. It's stress, because how do you get to heart disease? Yes, there's a big nutritional component, but when you start to get, the heart disease, it's inflammation. Inflammation then leads to the heart disease. And so when you are stressed out, guess what happens with your inflammation levels? They shoot up. Stress equals inflammation levels on the rise. Therefore, you want to get your stress down, the inflammation down, and so a heart disease condition is not going to manifest, as well as other things. Managing your stress, we have to have work-life balance, and we all don't know really what that means. It's on many of your LinkedIn chats and articles. It's for you looking at your life realistically and finding, am I devoting 80 hours of time to my work and my college life or studies, and then 20% to my personal life? You'll get out of balance, the stress will build, and you're setting yourself up for a crisis. You have to make time for yourself every day. The antidote to stress is rest and relaxation. And most people don't do that. Most people think they're resting, but they're checking their emails. They're going online and just checking one more Facebook post. So when we talk about resting and relaxing, what is meant by that is, sitting in a chair, lying on your couch, taking a few moments of doing nothing, and just feeling or trying to feel peace and cultivate peace within you, or reflecting on your day, or thinking about something that you're grateful for. That's what we mean by relaxation and rest. Stop committing yourself. Go back one more time. True confession for me, I have overcommitted myself with presentations in particular. I'm getting asked about once a week to do presentations, so then I have to change my clients. And then I said to myself, I am only going to, present twice a month. I'm not going to present once a week because it's too much, and I need to tend to other things, in particular, my clients and my own life. And so say no more often and stop being a people pleaser. I may say yes because I want somebody else to be happy, or I want to do them a favor, but I have to be realistic and not do it because I feel like I want to make them happy. I want to do it because it's coming from my heart and I have space in my day to do that. People love people pleasers. They make the best friends. They make the best workers, but it's a very unhealthy habit. Next. We know to nourish your body. I know you all know that. We know that you want to have more protein, you want to have more greens, and then you want to have, it should be low sugar fruits, not friends. I like that pun though. Because low sugar friends would be those that are not hyperactive. So you want to have low sugar treats and low sugar fruits. You want to drink half your weight in ounces. And of course, limit sugar, alcohol, and low nutritious carbs overall. When we talk about the supplements for mental health, we don't get enough nutrients nowadays from our earth. Our earth has so many things. The soil has toxic, and then the transportation of the food. Even if it's organic, you may not be getting 100% of your nutrients. What we do know is that the best nutrients to build your mental wellness is vitamin D taken daily, and vitamin B12 and fish oil. Those are the 3 top gainers for building mental health. They also help reduce stress, particular B12. The other thing to educate you about is 70% of your neurotransmitters are made in your gut. 30% are made in your brain. So if you have a gut that's not working, either constipated, bloated, leaky gut, if you have diarrhea, or some kind of illness like Crohn's disease, your gut is not in good gut health because there's more of an overgrowth of bad bacteria than good bacteria. And so if you have a gut that's not functioning, your neurotransmitters can't take the highway up to your brain. They're unable to do that because of being weighted down by all this bacteria in your gut. So you want to have probiotics to begin to nourish your gut, build the healthy bacteria, and in time it begins to diminish the bad bacteria. But there are also other essential supplements that you can take to help with your digestion and to help limit the bad bacteria that's in your gut. We need some bad bacteria, but we don't need it to overflow. And then, of course, take an overall multivitamin to restore your health. Next. Boost your mood and move. What is recommended by the National Institute of Health, both physical health and mental health, is you want to move at least 30 minutes a day. And you want to have that movement either be flexibility building, strength building, or cardiovascular building. So you want to look at it and say, okay, on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'm going to do a stretch class, a yoga class. I'm going to have fun with it. I'm going to do it outside. I'm going to laugh. I'm going to do it with friends or by myself. And then at least 2 days a week, have strength training. We know that you will lose your muscle mass, but we also are feeding our bones when we work out with weights, and it can be simple weights. And we have to be careful as women. We don't develop osteoporosis. So you want to start strength building even just a little bit. And I mean like 10 minutes with your weights at home if you don't go to a gym. And then you want to have cardiovascular strength because that's going to help everything in your body move. To think about it, we are built to move. And what's happened with our new technological devices and the way that we live life, we're moving less and we're sitting more. And our bodies are not made for that. Our bodies were made really to be farmers, to be hunters and gatherers. So we have lost that level of engagement with our body. So you want to think about, and a nice little motto for women is, how am I being a gatherer today? And think about is am I being a gatherer insofar as how am I moving with myself? How am I moving and really nourishing and being kind to my body? Because your body loves movement. Your mind may talk you out of it, but your body does. And even when you're feeling pain, low-level pain, the body will want to have some level of movement to work with it. Next one. So I am a certified meditation teacher. I've been meditating for 40 years. I go in and out of practice, but in the past several years, I've been very committed. It will ease your mind and it will ease your body and it will strengthen your mind and strengthen your body. And there's many different forms of meditation. It can be, sitting by yourself in your room, and you do not have to be in this perfect meditation posture. You can actually just be half laying on your bed with the intention, again, to quiet your mind, to move into your breath, and to relax your body. You may want to do a class. A lot of businesses now are pulling in meditation people, and I'd be happy to come to your organization if you're working with one and do sits. And sits are guided meditations. They're anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes in length to just help refresh your mind and body during the workday. You can also do walking meditation. And actually, that picture on the corner left is my son, who went with his wife and signed up with REI. And they did the hike to Base Camp Everest as part of their honeymoon. And so there's lots of pictures of them walking along the trails in Nepal and hiking up to Mount Everest. So walking is a very contemplative exercise. You have to set the intention to do that. And actually, if you're hiking and you're hiking in a strenuous territory or with strenuous climate, it's really great to develop a mindfulness walking pattern because that will help you be able to increase your endurance and be able to complete the hike. And then the bottom right is the labyrinth, which is getting a lot more traction nowadays. It was something that was started back in France and Chartres. And it's a way, it's kind of a spiritual practice of walking into the middle of the labyrinth, setting attention, perhaps asking for that which you would like. And then when you get to the middle of that, really claiming that which you would like to create in your life with full intention, and then walking out. So it's a very meditative process that's often equivalent to a spiritual practice as well. All of them are going to help you ease everything in your body. Next. And now befriend your breath. Because if we could sell breath, it would be, the stock on the market that has the most value. Because if we don't have our breath, we don't have our life. And most people don't pay attention to the breath. If you are having anxiety or if you're having a panic attack, the first thing that gets affected is your breath. So with panic attacks, the best thing for you to do is either sit or lie down, put your hands on your belly, and just think of breathing into your belly with your inhale, your pause, and your exhale. And just say to yourself, I am breathing. I am breathing. I am breathing. And believe it or not, the anxiety attack will start to de-escalate. If you're feeling just normal anxiety or a little bit above normal anxiety, right away you want to incorporate the breath so it doesn't move into an anxiety attack. And you do that, and the best breath to do is a 4-count inhale, a pause for 2 counts, and an exhale for 4 counts. And then when you have more practice, we increase on either side. When you are breathing, it naturally calms down the sympathetic nervous system. So that part of you that goes into a stress reaction, the antidote is breathing. Your body is saying, I'm stressed out. I need breath. Give me breath. But we don't think about that. And that's where you need to start orienting yourself that when I'm feeling stressful, anxiety, I'm going to breathe. The second thing to say about that is that if you're having depression, most people that are depressed are shallow breathers. So they breathe more from the neck up, if you will. So if you're feeling depressed, you want to have more of a force behind your inhale and exhale. You want to really breathe deeply with some more power to increase your energy level. It will also feed your brain. So when we're feeling anxious or we're feeling depressed, whatever breathing pattern we've gotten into that's abnormal is not feeding your brain, is not giving your brain the nutrients that it needs. And that's why sometimes people then get lightheaded or dizzy when they're having an attack. The breath isn't going to the brain. And sometimes why people don't have clear thinking. Breath isn't going to the brain, right? Makes sense. I know, sometimes when I say this to myself, I said, well, of course, we have to remind ourselves of all these things because in the busyness of our day, we forget about it. Okay, next slide. Embrace a positive mindset. Wake up every morning and before you get out of bed, think of one word that's your positive word. I like to think of thankful. So when I'm lying in bed and I open my eyes, I say, I'm thankful to be opening my eyes. I'm thankful. And when I set that as my word, then that word goes with me throughout my day. Sometimes people like to use the word happy, joyful, positive, positive, and you just say it, and that thought will transfer throughout your day. If you have a big school day or work day, or a challenge ahead of you may want to think of courage. Today, my word is courage. That's my positive mindset, to be courageous throughout my day, to be brave, in addition to be positive. Makes a huge impact. Okay, next one. Just read this quote for a moment. We have people in our life that are toxic. And they could be friends and they can be family members. I haven't met one family yet. Well, no, I'll take that back. Maybe I've met a couple of families I can count on one hand that don't have a toxic family member. And what I mean by that is a toxic family member is one that's always creating drama, is always overreacting, or is always over criticizing, always tends to blame versus taking responsibility, always tends to make it about themselves, um, always is dysfunctional in the way that they're relating to you in some way, and just carries a very heavy energy or an energy about them that you want to kind of move back and say, well, I need to catch my breath from this person. You want to start setting boundaries and limiting your contact with people that are emotionally or physically toxic. Emotional toxicity is also a book that you can look up or Google it. There's a lot on them right now, because when a person is emotionally toxic or their mind is toxic, that energy goes right into you. I mean, we have energies in our body. We're made up of energy, and that energy comes into you, or the thought comes into you. And you may find yourself and your nervous system reacting to that person. So you want to start to limit that. And again, you're going to have to read more, have another conversation about how you do that. But start thinking about the people that are toxic that you want to say no to, because you're here to be happy. You're here to create your joy and find meaning in your happiness and joy, not to be burdened by other people. Next. Practice daily gratitude. And for those of you that are Oprah fans, know that she really started this movement in the mainstream, but there have been thousands of clinical trials done on the important factors of keeping and maintaining one's health. Gratitude always comes out to be number one or number two. Gratitude. And so it trumps sometimes food and nutrition. It trumps sometimes exercise. That doesn't mean don't do that. That doesn't mean don't pay attention to your exercise or your food. But practicing gratitude will begin to ignite endorphins in your body, the feel good endorphins in your body that begin to circulate throughout your body and into your brain. Next slide. If you are needing support, let's go back to what Linda said. There's some things right on the left and on the right. So I wanted to just discern and the difference between counselors and psychologists and psychiatrists. So you can read that yourself. I am a counselor. Some people like to go to the psychologist because they want to have more testing done. Counselors don't do formal testing. We do screening. So I can screen for depression or trauma or anxiety. I don't do a full-blown battery of tests. And then, of course, a psychiatrist is the person that does all the evaluations to really get to the nitty-gritty of what's happening with you. And then is the only person that can begin to disperse medication, as well as your primary care physician. And then on the other side, I have to say that, you know where more of my referrals are coming from? The ladies of Loudoun County, or the housewives of, Potomac County, whatever, that I get more word of mouth referrals right now from friends and from these different women groups on Facebook. It's just astounding. So, connect with those social platforms that you trust. Not all of them you can trust, but also ask a friend. There is at least a friend with 3 degrees separation that knows of a counselor. And of course, all the other things on the right are very good resources for you to begin to find different kinds of support. And support could also be, as I said before, support groups or taking a class in some aspect of anxiety or depression, so you learn more about you and learn how to moderate it. Next slide. These are immediate mental health resources. So if you're feeling you want to know more for yourself or a family member, and going again back to Linda's great question, the National Alliance on Mental Health does have a lot of different articles on where to find help for your friends and your family members, as well as yourself. Also, when to know the warning signs of when somebody's sinking deep, or suicide warning signs, as well as the other sites that are listed here. Every county has some kind of a mental health program. So they have, within the county system, you'll have mental health as well as different organizations. You know, we have all these women's centers throughout Northern Virginia, which are awesome. Each of them has a women's center that focuses on helping women if they're in domestic violence situations or feeling depressed, anxious, or experiencing trauma. So go to your women's centers as well. Next slide. So thank you. This is the name of my business, and I've also just started a podcast. This is my new passion project. If you want to do a simple meditation, the last episode, which was published live yesterday, that's one on just meditating. And that's an easy, friendly kind of one that I purposely did for people that are new to meditation. So you can get some resources through the podcast as well. So thank you for participating. And I just want to again see if there's any questions that come up. Can you unmute people, Linda?
They can type in their questions into the chat box.
Okay.
And I have to say, every time, Dr. Suzanne, that I hear you speak, I take away something that is hugely beneficial. And today I just want to bring to the forefront one of the things that you said about saying no, or pulling back from always being available to people. You said, I have chosen to, and then you set your rules down for when you would engage on your terms, which I think is incredibly powerful. It's something that I do in financial planning all the time, is find that doing rules-based thought processes and decision-making is extremely empowering. You don't have to sit down every time and think, is this a situation in which I say yes or no? You have your rules predetermined. So I love that you brought that to the forefront.
And I love that you just brought that out, because the other thing I see with finances in my practice, and again, I mean, it happens at least once a week, is that, you know, there's a parent that keeps on giving too much money to one of the children, in my opinion, that makes the child codependent, that whenever there's something financial, instead of that child going out and kind of trying to figure it out or looking at their budget, how they could do things differently, they go to the parents and I need more money, I need more money. So also looking that if you are in a position financially and you can give money, sometimes it's better to say no, because then that person will not develop the skill sets to moderate their expenses, their income, and plan a good budget or their future.
It's very, very important. So thank you for that.
Welcome.
So now let's talk about some financial, the last part of my financial planning. I have to share my screen here. Let me figure out how to do this. Let's see. Share. So I have yet to figure out how to do this with the whole toolbar. So let's just try this. So you're
And Linda, I'll be on for about 10 minutes and then I have my next client, just to let you know.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So can you see my screen get organized?
Yes.
Oh, perfect. So what I wanted to end our presentation with is a topic that I get a lot of excitement about, surprisingly. And what we're talking about here is the creation of a legacy box, a way to organize your documents, your history, your records, so that the person who needs to pick up that box and move forward has all the tools at hand to do that. So how do we get started in getting organized? So let's try first of all defining what a legacy box is. So essentially, it's a consolidation of the documents for your family to easily settle your estate or to take control of your estate if they need to. And that sounds, kind of like a dark topic, but it's actually a very positive process. I think it helps people out tremendously in peace of mind and to figure out what they need to do first. So this is an example of, I wonder if I click on this, can you see that slideshow now? Maybe that'll help. So in a settling an estate, how many of you guys, you show a, thought process here, have had to settle somebody else's estate? I rarely hear stories about what a wonderful and positive experience it was. It tends to cause a great deal of confusion. So essentially, estate settlement without a legacy box or a resource that's organized, your whole family comes together and they wonder where everything is. They have to then try to remember details of what you've told them. And if you've ever played telephone, everybody has a different story and different details. And in fact, you could have told people different things at different times. So then the search goes on. They search through your house. They talk to unbelievable number of customer service people. They go through files that you have in your home. They try to access your safe. They try to figure out passwords to accessing any online data. We all know how much fun that is. Then they have to actually tap into your doctor for medical history and records and for that aspect of billing and things of that nature. Digging through all your digital files. How many of us get our statements now online? They aren't even mailed to us. So it can be an overwhelming process that leads to a feeling of just absolute gridlock in trying. It can take years sometimes, and it's not a very effective or efficient way of dealing with it. And I'm not talking about having a will, which is an important part of your legacy box. I'm talking about compiling and getting organized with the stuff that you need. So whenever you have an estate settlement and you have all of your stuff organized, your family comes together, they have it all in one place. Everything they need is right there. They settle with the help usually of an attorney. They're easily able to settle all aspects of your estate, which means honoring your wishes, right? Doing exactly what you want done. And then everybody goes out together and discusses how amazing you are. Now, my daughter created this slide, so I have to smile. Clearly, she is trying to get a message through to me. But I think that really, highlights what the problems are with that. So what do you put in a legacy box? How do you start getting it organized? Official documents and certificates, financial statements, insurance information, your wills and your estate planning that are updated and accurate, within a reasonable amount of time. So we want to make sure that's taken care of. Property records. It's not unusual for people to own real assets that somebody else in their family may not know the history behind. Medical history is very important moving forward. Social media login information. I don't know how many times it's kind of devastating to lose a friend and then have their Facebook, always reminding you of what a wonderful time you used to have. You need somebody to kind of break into that. And your contacts, who is on your contact list. My father-in-law recently passed away, and we put together a memorial for him, and it was, it took us probably 2 weeks just to find a list, consolidate a list of who we should contact. And I guarantee we missed several people. And then historical and family records. We want to focus on that. So let's say that we have this box and that we have it divided into sections. And our first section is documents and certificates. So here we want your birth certificate, your baptism certificates. My family has a family cemetery in a little hollow in Tennessee. I'm from Appalachia. And to be baptized was important. We had to prove that prior to being interred into the family cemetery, something we didn't know until we were faced with that. Marriage license and death certificates, all very important documents to have. Passports, military records, all of those official documents that get us through life. Let's have them all in one place. Financial statements. These are your investment statements, your pension benefit analysis, your credit card statements, your access codes and passwords, which could be written down on a list and, handwritten and put in there, but updated on a regular basis. If they're not all there, at a time when somebody needs them, that's just the way it goes. But if you can, knock out 90% of them, that's a huge help. and also your tax records when your tax payments have been made. And what I find with financial statements, and again, I could spend a great deal more time on this, but really all you need is your end of year statement. So what I normally do is I have my end of year from last year. So for example, my legacy box has financial statements from the end of 2020, and then it has up to the third quarter statement of 2021. So as I got my first quarter statement, I filed it. When I got my second quarter statement, I popped the first quarter statement out and filed the second quarter. So I do that until I get to the fourth quarter, and then I just have end of year statement, which has all of the information that you need for that account in that one statement. You don't have to keep every single month of every single year. So I just want to to say, even inside of these files, an organizational system is very important. It's something that I help my clients with all the time. Insurance coverage. So you want a file that has your insurance policies, your life insurance, health insurance, homeowners. I have clients who bought life insurance back when they joined the military in 1972. And that policy is still active and valid, even though they haven't had to make a payment on it in quite a while. Unless you have a copy or a notation that it exists, nobody would know until it's time to notify that life insurance company. Homeowners insurance, auto insurance, umbrella policies, so that you have control over those policies going forward. Long-term care insurance has some pretty terrific riders in there because they recognize that cognitive decline sometimes happens with people who own long-term care insurance policies. So they will cover benefits after you pass if you have not filed for them, or if your family didn't even know you had a policy that covered that type of thing. And then the coverage of payments. So this is, for example, if you have, actually a good example of this is when my daughter went to college, her best friend also accompanied her, and her friend's father went too. And as he was filling out the financial aid packet, he checked a box that for $2 extra waived her tuition the first year of college if something happened to him. I'm sure he put very little thought, except it's only $2. Do we need to waste $2? Absolutely not. But very, very tragically, within 4 weeks, he was killed in a tractor accident on his farm. And because he had checked that box, her entire first year of college was paid for. So check and see if on debts that we incur, if there are coverage of payments, in the event of our illness or decline or our disability. Estate planning. This is something that you want to have in this legacy box. You want to have your last will and testament, your living will. You want to have your medical directives, things of this nature, and any other thing. My legacy box in estate planning also has what I would like for final rites. I'm a Catholic, so I had strong feelings on some Bible verses, and I also did my own playlist because I have, anyone that gets to our age has been to a share of funerals, and I'm always just bored stiff with the music sometimes. So the music that I have planned for my own funeral are songs that mean something to me and my family, and that maybe someone could even rock to. That would be nice. But those are things to express what your wishes are and what's important to you, because this truly shows your family where your values are. For your auto and home, you want your car titles in it. A lot of times we own real property that we're not making payments on, so we want to know where those documents are that show ownership for estate settlement. Mortgage records, jewelry and collectible appraisals. This is something I've started doing the last 10 years. When I am gifted or am inherit or purchase jewelry, I make sure that I have an appraisal form in there with it, or a receipt, because sometimes looking at a piece of jewelry, you really can't tell whether the stones are real, what the the gold is. So, to prevent, we all hear those stories about the Salvation Army, collecting and ending up with a 3 or 4 carat diamond ring. Hopefully that's something that you can prevent. So here I have a question. What do you think about prepaid funerals? I think I think that it is an excellent idea. If you are like-minded in a way that you want to take care of those details, I see absolutely nothing wrong with it. I can tell you, if you're worried about paying too much, people who plan funerals for you often are not in the mindset to really think about costs. And I feel like, my own personal opinion, I feel like they are just sometimes exploited, and it's a very sad thing. So taking that opportunity to exploit someone you love away from somebody else who does not have the best intentions would be very powerful on your part. So certificates of authenticity on collectibles that you might have, coin collections, having receipts for what you paid for things. And if you have a safety deposit box, a note about where the box is held and where the keys are. You can put the keys right in the folder. It's quite handy. So I just want to say, don't underestimate the things you have. And when I talk about things, it's what most people think about when they're closing out family, their parents or grandparents' estates. But there's a lot of things that are also important about you, such as your family medical history, not just you, but your family, who had what and to what degree, because sometimes whenever somebody needs to know something, the person who knows those things are no longer with us. Have they seen a specialist, and why? Just the medical contact information, get that down. It's a very important part of who you are. And I think that taking the time to fill this out, a lot of the stuff that I'm talking about, I mean, it's a one and done. You put it in there, and there's nothing really to update except for, of course, your financial statements and things in your estate planning. Social media is one of those things that I'm certainly no expert. I'm not real big on social media at all. But for those of us who have Facebook pages, just so we can talk to our kids or our grandkids, those logins, are very, very difficult for other people to get a hold of, even with a death certificate. So having a list of where your social media accounts are and how to access them might be something you want to consider. And then let's talk about your legacy. So I just wanted to kind of share this with you, because when you go, all of your stories, all of your personal history, all of your experiences are extremely valuable and can be lost if we don't document them. So I just want to really express to you, this is actually a picture of my dad. Remarkable story. He graduated from the 8th grade and was sent to work on a farm. They were sharecroppers. He joined the military at 15 because he didn't want to spend his life working on a farm. And he traveled throughout the world. He had the most incredible life. He got his GED. He got a college degree. He did so many amazing things before he retired at the ripe old age of 36. And the stories that he tells of his experience, the first time he saw the ocean, the first time he saw the desert, the first time he saw a jungle, all of those things are just so incredibly powerful to our family history. All of us are explorers. All of us have wanderlust. And I know it started with him. And this is my mom. She was a Marine, right, I guess in 1951, right after World War II. What an empowering time for women. And to hear her stories of how she left a very, very small town in Detroit, much against her parents' wishes, and kind of struck out on her own. She's one of my heroes. There's no doubt about it. But I think that all of us have those stories to tell. All of us have such an incredible history of bravery and courage and sacrifice to get, you know, your kids and grandkids to where they are. And so what I did was I actually did an oral biography for my parents and for many of my clients who I find absolutely fascinating in their history. When I was doing my mom's oral biography, and actually I have questions that you can ask or record for yourself on my website. You don't need to put in any, you know, email address or anything. You can, it's lindajblack.com. Feel free to tap in there and download the list of questions from the Historical Society. You know, it's great discussion points to start talking. When I talked to my mom about her personal history, I was, you know, she remembers, she was born in 1934. You know, she remembers the Depression. She remembers World War II, the beginning and end of it. She, you know, watched civil rights take over the South. She watched the women's movement. You know, she watched vaccines come up for her kids. She, you know, the history that the presidents that she has lived through, the traveling that she has done is just an incredible story that I want my great grandkids to hear. And so they can hear it in her own voice. And my dad as well, they can hear it in his Appalachian drawl, which I absolutely love hearing. It's a part of their legacy. And when my parents are no longer around, a piece of them will be there for the following generations. So what do you need? What do you need to start your legacy box? The first thing you need is a box or a file. They are not that sophisticated. They don't need to be under lock and key. They're just documents that need a space to be in that is you know, big enough to hold all of the different categories. And we need to make sure that somebody knows where it is, whether it's under your bed or in your closet. You know, I have many people who feel like having them in a waterproof box or fireproof box is a good idea, and I agree. But put some thought into it and make sure that what you have to store it in is adequate and sufficient. And then we want a checklist, so we want to make sure that we know. And I have a checklist to get on my website. It's lindajblack.com. And then a journal, you know, to write down some of your notes and thoughts. I think that's a very, very nice part of your legacy. You're getting all of your documents together. That's probably the longest time commitment that you're going to make here, is to figure out where all of your statements are, where all of your estate planning documents are, things of that nature. But it's better that you do it than somebody, you know, would have to do it for you and not have your knowledge about what you have and where it is. So, and then somebody, like I said, just, you know, they don't have to know what's in it. They just have to know where the box is. They just have to know, you know, if something happens to me, check the bottom drawer or the third shelf on my bookshelf, whatever, wherever you choose to store it. You know, make sure that somebody knows that it's there. So I that pretty much sums it up. I am very, very happy to answer any questions. Anything that I can tell you or help you in that way. Any thoughts anybody has? I would love to know, you know, if you have a box like this, you know, how, you know, any testimonials on how convenient you found to build it, or, you know, any suggestions or things that I missed. Okay. Well, guys, this is the end of our 3-part series on retiring and being very on our game, planning and being very proactive as we move forward. It's a very exciting time, and I wish all of you a great deal of success on a time in your life when it should be all about, you know, you and the difference that you've made in the world and your continuing support of people who are important to you. And also don't forget to share yourself and your experiences and the incredible person and resource that you are to so many people. It's a great time to start giving back, and there's, you know, any number ways to do that. So thank you very, very much. And I look forward to seeing you all again in the future. I very much enjoyed teaching at Ollie, and think you guys are brilliant for having become very active in it. So have a wonderful, wonderful rest of the week. Thank you.
All righty. Thank you so much. Alrighty, everybody. I'm going to be closing out the class. Hopefully, everybody has a good rest of their holiday season. And hopefully, I'll see you again in some other classes.